Welcome team, my name's James and I'm going to talk to you today about sparkling wine, Méthode Traditionnelle and champagne. So, sparkling wine is a broad term. It can be used to describe any bubbly wine. If we call a wine champagne, it's got to come from the region by that name, Champagne in France. For New Zealand, for our high quality bubbles that are fermented in the bottle, we tend to use the term Méthode Traditionnelle. Now this still annoys the French a little, but it certainly respects the regional terms that we like to adhere to in New Zealand. We wouldn't want people overseas calling their Sauvignon Blanc Marlborough, for instance, and that's why we stick to the rules and call it champagne as a champagne. Sparkling wine, you can make it very simply. You can basically use the big SodaStream method. You can carbonate it, a very simple, very easy way to get bubbles into a wine. Méthode Traditionnelle, which is the method as I described used for champagne or other quality wines, that takes a little longer. You've got to have several elements. One, in Champagne you can only use 3 grapes: Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier for the red grapes, and Chardonnay, the white grape. Now you may be familiar with these grapes used in still wines as well. They've been grown in Champagne for a long time. We use them in New Zealand too, especially in areas like Marlborough where we grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and a little bit of Pinot Meunier, though it's not as common. Now, think of the climates. Marlborough's cool climate, so it's perfect. It's just like Champagne. Cool climate is the key for champagnes and for Méthode Traditionnelles. A base wine's made to a low level of alcohol. More yeast is added when it's bottled into its individual bottles that will eventually be sold in. 2 things happen. It's an alcohol fermentation, so that takes the wine up to usually around 12%. It adds complexity. That's where you get those lovely toasty flavours, biscuity flavours, brioche, those sort of things, the creamy texture of some of them. But there's a secondary part to it where carbonic gas is created from those yeast cells as they die off. And this gives the wine its lovely bubbles. Now in Champagne, the wines will be kept in bottle maybe up to 36 months. We follow the same practices here for our quality Méthode Traditionnelles. So we've got Brut, that's very common. It's the dry style. We've got Sec, that's the sweet style. You may see Asti Spumantis. Asti's a regional wine from Italy, sweet and low alcohol. Rosés, they'll mostly be made from Pinot Noir or Pinot Meunier because the skin contact will give the wine its colour. If you see a wine with Blanc de Blanc on it, that means it's made exclusively from the Chardonnay grape. It means white of white. If you see Blanc de Noir, a white wine made from Pinot Meunier or Pinot Noir, white of black. You'll see vintage, and that will generally come from what's considered an exceptional year in that region. Now, they don't happen all the time. Sometimes there's quite a gap between vintages. Sometimes you might see 2 or 3 in a row. But they're worth noting, they're exceptional wines, and they age in the bottle as well. Whereas non-vintage styles, that's made to be brought into the shop, sold and consumed. Around 70% of champagne and methodes are drunk during the summer months. Think things like Cup Week with the races, other celebrations such as Christmas and New Year, and of course a lot of weddings happen then. It's a traditional wine of celebration. Now we talked about sparkling wine. A lot of the cheaper ones, you'll notice, they're really, really big bubbles when you first pour them, that gush and gush, and then they stop quite quickly, they dissipate. Good Méthode Traditionnelle and good champagne, the bead keeps flowing. The bead will be there in the glass for a long time. So, you can see quite clearly when a glass is poured for you blind, you'll know what the quality of the wine is going to be like without even tasting it. Let's have a brief history lesson. The tendency of still wines from Champagne region to lightly sparkle was noted in the Middle Ages, and this was considered a fault. The famous monk Dom Perignon was originally charged by his superiors to get rid of this fault of bubbles in the bottle because so many of them burst in the cellars. Interestingly, it was actually the British who first saw this trait of sparkling wine to be a desirable thing, and that's where the market for champagne really started. So during the 17th century, the English, they improved bottle production by using coal-fired glass and could handle the pressure. Also, the English at this time rediscovered the use of cork stoppers. Well team, that's a brief introduction to the world of sparkling wine and champagne. Enjoy and cheers.